The next is labels. As far as I understand, labels are mainly a European device. One popular example here is the Erasmus Plus program. Another is the EIT digital program. There's, I believe, also one relating to language acquisition. These are things that, at the moment, mostly degree programs apply for, and after they have demonstrated that they've met a certain minimum level of quality, they are given that label. Labels are considered to be something that are applied to degrees, just like accreditations, not to students, except by association. And the last are badges. I guess of all these, maybe badges are one of the newest. There have been in the last few years a growing interest in badges, and particularly outside of the formal education sphere. There's quite a degree of interest in badges. So NGOs are offering badges to their volunteers. Some corporations, Microsoft, IBM, and others, offer badges as part of their online trainings, sometimes with and sometimes without associated fees. So this is a really flexible and new tool that's being offered to to recognize skills. And since it's rather new and maybe it's not so familiar for many people, I want to say just a little bit more about it. What is a badge? Badge is simply an image, like a JPG or a PNG image. And it's something that can be easily put into a curriculum, uploaded to platforms like LinkedIn, shared social media, and so on and so on. What makes them interesting is that the image needs to contain metadata in a certain format. That format is defined by the Open Badge standard. Currently, the most recent is version 2.0 of the Open Badge standard. And that metadata includes things like the email of the recipient. And for data protection reasons, that can be used as a hash. That can be put in the terms of the hash, so you're not revealing the actual email address of the student, name of the badge, description of the badge, criteria that were used to issue the badge, who issued it, evidence. There could be a link actually to external, for example, file. Like in the case of a badge being issued as a result of a project being accomplished, there could be actually an issue, a link to an online PDF of the project that the student actually presented in order to earn the badge. Things like when it was issued, when it expires, and possibly standards. But what's interesting, I think, in our sense, are these things over here to the left. There is an built into the notion of open badges is two different online verification systems that are both rather simple and both are as easy as clicking, and it tells you immediately whether the badge has been tampered with or whether it's authentic, and you can be sure that the information that's contained in the badge is correct. It allows, for example, people that view the contents of the badge to be able to review information regarding the requirements of the badge. Allows access to details regarding, for example, the organization who issued the badge, like maybe a link, the name of the institution, so on and so on. Information about when the badge was issued, when it expires. So it's, in the case of, well, for example, certificates often expire after a certain amount of time. Badges can also expire after a certain amount of time, requiring the recipients to do a certain amount of retraining. And then lastly, there's a possibility of downloading evidences that I already mentioned. So the next thing we did was try to take a look at the political context that we're working in. We looked at these 6 different strategies, documents, programs to try to identify desired properties for the program, given the current European context and the directions that the European Union is going in terms of education. So, for example, the Strategic Framework for Education and Training 2020. So, for example, report on the implementation of the strategic format, the European Qualifications Framework, the European E-Competence Framework, New Skills Agenda, and so on and so on. So what we did was read these and study them, and from them we extracted 9 different properties that we thought were desirable. Like, for example, that the system be transparent, accessible, and allow easy comparison of student skills throughout the EU. That's something that's actually mentioned in 3 of the 6 documents. Quality assurance is mentioned in 1 of them, and so on. And at the end here, we've identified 3, which we think are specific to data science. That being that requires renewal after a certain period of time, providing a framework which can quickly adapt to changes in skills requirements and measure skills on a highly granular and individual basis. So for each of these things, we looked at whether or not typically university degrees, certificate labels, and badges can provide those properties. And in some cases, we have usually, but it could be accomplished, which is the check and the question mark here. So you can see from this that the two tools that seem most appropriate are certificates and badges, with badges having a certain amount of advantage. So actually what we're proposing is a little bit of a hybrid between the two. So we're considering badges, we're considering the program being based upon open badges, but we're going to include some aspects of certificates in what we're doing. So what are the key aspects of the system? So this is going back to the needs of the stakeholders. The first is that we're going to use open badges. And like we said, open badges include mechanisms of verification online. They can be displayed online. They're awarded to individuals, not programs. The badge requirements can be defined in terms of skills and given to students before the completion of a degree. Here, we're specifically talking about skills and not classes. So we're allowing this to be rather flexible. It can be done through projects, assignments, exams, things like that, not necessarily passing a class. And then lastly, this thing about the badges being able to include evidence, which we think is really interesting. Second aspect is that we're going to have a group of experts from both industry and academia who are going to be working together to both define and maintain the badge scheme. At the moment, that team is actually the BDVA Task Force, the members of the BDVA Task Force number 9, who come from both industry and academia. And all the things we've been doing, we've been through all the different steps of this process, we've been consulting with them and getting their feedback and taking into consideration their opinions and their proposals. The idea of this is that the program should provide a single common set of data science skills throughout the European Union. And hopefully that if this program gains some notoriety, desire to meet those requirements on the part of an educational institution would mean that, for example, industry will be influencing the design of the educational programs. The requirements of the badges can be updated when needed. So here we have our two main stakeholders, industry and academia. They can decide for themselves when the scheme will need to be updated. And programs that offer badges can claim that their training meets industrial needs. Badges will only be issued by trusted third parties. There's going to be an application and a vetting process to ensure that some kind of minimum quality is being, the programs are of some minimum quality to be able to actually issue the badges. This should also hopefully increase the prestige and the notoriety of the program. And then hopefully have two other additional benefits. For data scientists who have them, they can consider it to be a merit, and programs that offer them can also use that as part of their marketing. And then the last is a little bit more of the same. If badges become popular, the requirements will influence the overall training of data scientists, not just necessarily universities that are participating in a program. And then, like I said, as before, industry will be able to influence the requirements of the badges and thereby data science education in general. And the program should become well known and promoted by both industry and academia. There's one need of the data scientist stakeholders, which is related to non-formal and informal learning, which we will be hopefully addressing by the second recognition system. So we'll leave that for the very last part of the presentation. Okay, so how does this all come together? This is kind of the main kind of schema that we're imagining. We said like representatives from both industry and academia are going to work together to design the system. Academic programs will apply to issue badges. Academic programs will continue the training that they already are doing to train data scientists when they've determined on their own. So this doesn't include, for example, the BDVA at all. when they have established that an individual student has met the requirements that they've established for issuing the badge, they're able to issue a badge directly to a student. And then that student is able to display the badges to, for example, human resources departments that are offering jobs in data science. And as mentioned earlier, well, this is actually the graphical representation of the badge, one of the badges we're offering. Inside the badge, there's useful metadata, which allows them to be verifiable and provide all the other benefits which I discussed earlier. So as you can imagine, actually, one of the most important aspects of this program are actually the requirements of each of the individual badges. So we started by working on the requirements for the first badge we were offering, this Data Science Analytics badge. We didn't want to start from scratch. There's actually been a lot of interesting work done in recognizing skills in data science, and so we started with that, the work of, for example, the Edison project and the EDSA projects. There's actually interrelations between these two, and we focus a little bit more on work done by the Edison project. In fact, we based the very first, the 0.1 version of the requirements directly upon their work from the Edison EDSF, the Edison Data Science Framework. And then what we did was 2 rounds of academia surveying of universities and corporations based upon those requirements to get some feedbacks. So we surveyed, analyzed results, revised, then presented the results to the BDVA Skills Task Force, got their feedback and agreed upon a new version. Did some public presenting of that work in places like the ICT and in other meetings to get more feedback. Did another round of surveying, another round of revisions, another round of feedback, and then we end up with the version 1.0 of the requirements, which we piloted. Analyzed results, we found that we really didn't feel that it was necessary to do any revisions of those requirements, and actually the 1.0 version of that is what we're currently using as the final, or the current version of the badge requirements. This is the final set of requirements, 6 of them, and the exact wording that we settled on. A lot of the changes that were made in the revisions are actually related to the exact words and the way that the things were phrased to make sure that they were as clear and as precise as possible. The first one is the student is able to, the first skill, data science skill 1, is that the student is able to identify existing requirements to choose and execute the most appropriate data discovery technique to solve a problem depending upon the nature of the data and the goals to be achieved. And as you can see, there are 5 more. We can talk about some of these in more detail at the end if you're interested. So what are the next steps? So now we've got the requirements defined. Universities that are interested in issuing badges need to complete an application and submit it for review. The application contains kind of 2 main sections. First is the program needs to provide just some general information about themselves, number of years, number of credits, a little bit of history, so on and so on, just kind of basic general things. And then they need to show how they're ensuring that their students have acquired those 6 skills before they plan to issue the badge. And like I said, this is, we're requesting that they actually provide evidences that they're the evidences they use to confirm the acquirement of skills on the parts of their students. So what exactly does that look like? So in the application, basically for each skill, we're asking them to complete a table like this, in which they describe where they're addressing the skill, what courses or what activities they're using in the degree program to address that skill, whether it's optional, mandatory, the number of hours that are being dedicated to that skill, and the evidences that are being used. So it's not just pass or fail a course, it's actually in what question, on what exam, or what assignment, or things at that level of granularity are they using to evaluate the skills of students. And then we're actually asking that they provide a PDF version of the evidence, not answers the student provides, but the questions that are being posed or the assignments that are being posed to the students. And lastly, they need to provide the minimum level that they're going to require their students. So like I said, this is something that's somewhat different from the requirements for the degree. It can be different from the requirements of the degree. It's not necessarily that all the students that complete the degree program will be able to meet the requirements of the badge. For example, if there's a speciality within a degree on data science, it's possible that only the students that are in that speciality will be able to be candidates for the badges. Or it could be something even more specific. It could be that, maybe, for example, data visualization is one of the requirements, and maybe data visualization is not a course that's required for a degree, and maybe only students that sign up for the data visualization course within a degree will be eligible to apply for the badge. Okay, so what's done with these applications? What we do is we have a group of experts that are reviewing them from the BDVA task force. The idea is that as soon as an application is received, it's sent to reviewers. If they both agree to accept or reject, that decision is adopted. In the case of accepting, there's the possibility of the reviewer suggesting improvements. If improvements are considered to be needed, the application is accepted for 1 year, and the program is given the opportunity in that year to implement the improvements. If improvements are not considered to be needed, a degree program is accepted for 4 years. If there's disagreements between the two reviewers, they're sent to a third reviewer. In the case of one accept of the three, the program could be invited to submit a revision. In the case of two accepts, it's the same as before. If improvements are needed, they're offered the possibility for 1 year, if not for 4 years. And if there are no accepts, a program application is rejected. Even in the case of rejection, there's a possibility of appealing. And like I mentioned earlier, there's a possibility of resubmitting an application in the case of revision. In the case of a first submission being, for example, accepted by 1 and rejected by 2. And the review process for applications, revised applications, appeals is all basically the same. Then once a degree program has been told that they are capable of issuing badges, the workflow kind of has 4 steps. The first is the same as always. Students learn and demonstrate the acquisition of the skills. Once a student understands that they've completed the requirements for the badge, they apply for the badge using an application form which we have partially provided and which each university can specialize to their own needs in a badge issuing platform that we have identified. So basically, they go to this platform, they complete an application, and also more importantly, they complete this platform's data protection agreement. The badge platform that we've selected is located in the European Union. All the data stays in the European Union, and we've been told by them that they strictly adhere to the European requirements regarding data protection. So in that sense, we hope that there's no problems with this part of the legal aspects of this, because it's actually the student that's applying, and it's a student that is voluntarily submitting the information that's needed for the badge. Once the application is submitted, it's the individual university that reviews that application, and once they give it the okay, it's the badge platform that actually generates and issue the badges directly to the student in the form of an email with the link. So like I said, the last step of this is a student, once they get the badge, what they can do with it. Students receive an email with a link to the badge. Students can upload their badges to any open badge repository, which are sometimes called backpacks. The platform that we have selected includes a open badge repository, which is free for students to use if they wish. If they also wish, they can download the badge. It's, like I said, it's just an image file, and they can include in the digital documents like curriculums and share them in social media. Viewers that view the badge in platforms that are aware of how to identify and interpret the the metadata of a badge, can then verify the authenticity of the badge, access the metadata contained in the badge, and open linked evidence files. So in the next slide here, I'm actually I've provided screenshots, I pasted together screenshots of what a person can view if the student chooses to share the badge through the badge backpack that's provided by the badge platform that we have selected. And you can see here that there's information about who is issued by, who was created by. In the case of this badge, it's us. When it was issued, when it expires, and who earned it. The data writing earner is really in the case of a name, but more specifically in terms of technical issues, it's actually an email address that the student provided. Then there's a general description of the badge, the required skills, information here about the credits, like in this case, how it was funded. And then at the end, like I said, there's this link to an evidence file. So the students can submit, for example, a project or something else that they did as part of the degree program, or the degree program can actually require that the students submit certain evidences and require that they include that as part of their application. And then that's shared, for example, to who has access to the badge. The badge platform that this is associated with has different levels of protection. It can be publicly available. It can be available only to people that the student gives authorization to, and so on and so on. And then there's also this possibility of checking the badge. So in this case, if you actually saw this online, you click here, and then a little green text appears next to it that says the badge is authentic. So what I've described is actually up and working. We've actually piloted the entire program, and we actually have 2 data science programs who are currently able to issue badges. The first is Master in Data Analytics from the Polytechnic University of Valencia, and the second is the Data and Web Science program of the Aristotle University. And where are we going with this? The current state of the program is that there's a call for applications currently open. People that are universities that are interested in it can go to this web page, and they can see lots of documentation that describes in much more detail what I've talked about today. And download the application form and so on. Let's see. I've more or less covered this, and I see that I've actually been talking longer than I thought, so I'm going to kind of skip over this quickly because this is more or less kind of a review of what I talked about at the very beginning. I want to talk briefly about the work we're doing in non-formal education. So the first is kind of a general thing. Well, first, non-formal education is education that's institutionalized, intentional, and planned by an education provider, not necessarily an accredited university. And it's something that's in general considered to be complementary or alternative, an alternative to formal education. So typical examples are, for example, in-house training by corporations, online training in the first of webinars, seminars, MOOCs, that kind of thing. And this kind of training is actually becoming more and more important in data science for lots of reasons. With growing demand and insufficiency of data scientists in general, employers are offering training to existing employees to try to meet their own data science needs. Also, employees are seeing this demand and maybe are, for economic or for promotional reasons, are interested in getting more training to ascend or to change positions within their corporations. Also, working professionals often find that going back to school to try to get a formal education degree can be impractical. And from the point of view of employers, non-formal training can be cost efficient. So in the case of recognizing skills in non-formal education, the challenge is a little bit different. For students, it's how to pick from the overwhelming supply. So in this case, it's trying to find out things about like which program is more highly valued, what's the right level of training for their experience and expectations. For industry, it's just a little bit like the degrees, but it's even more so. How to compare different types and quality of training. How serious are different programs, the duration, the level, will they provide testing? Like we've heard from some human resources people that, they directly don't consider to be very serious any online programs that don't provide testing of any sort, this kind of thing. Educational providers, it's a little bit like we discussed earlier, how to stand out for the rest. So we're trying to design programs that address those needs. And the program we're proposing at the moment has two different parts. The first part is in labeling, labeling in the sense of like labels that are in other places, not in the sense of the labels we talked about in terms of like EIT Digital and so on, and more like nutritional labels of food products to help increase transparency and ease of comparison. And in the endorsement part, we're going to be addressing more of the quality control. And I'm already want to say that this is something really difficult, and we're not exactly sure how we're doing this, how we're going to accomplish that, and something we're still working on. The labeling part is more mature, and like I said, it's related to this nutritional labeling. Like this is actually photographs of cereal boxes from a grocery store here in Spain. And this is the kind of thing that someone who's comparing two different cereals might find useful in terms of, which one has more salt, which one has more sugar. In the case of non-formal education, we like to provide something similar. This is a proof of concept. This is not exactly what we're going to be doing. In fact, the graphic design is something that we just did internally and needs to be a lot more pretty and attractive. But to give you an idea, this is the kind of thing that we're imagining. Like for here, it would graphically say who is, for example, this degree targeting. So in this case, would be data scientists who are more at the analytics level and more at the programming level. Very low level program. Here are the number of hours that the program is dedicating to each of the 6 skills we identified earlier, the total number of hours in the program and how they're dividing it, how they're actually imparting that education. In this case, online interactive web is all the program. What kind of testing? Here's online testing with some kind of identification verification service. This, I'm not actually sure whether that's the case of this program or not, but we include that in this example, and then a link. So that's what I prepared for today. The timeline of work for this year is the following. For badges, like I said, we're currently accepting applications. In the case of the labeling and supplement, we're currently surveying stakeholders to get feedback on initial proposal. The idea is to pilot that proposal in the summer and roll it out this fall. All right, well, thank you very much for your attention. In the end, no one interrupted me to get any feedback, and I ended up talking more than I intended. So I would be very interested in hearing your questions and trying to answer your questions either now or through email, or if people are particularly interested, we can also try to set up an online audio conference or that kind of thing to try to talk about your interests. So, Thomas, if there are any questions or comments, I would be happy to hear them now.
Thank you very much, Nick. It has been a very interesting presentation. I think that this type of skills recognition system is quite interesting, not only for the people that apply for these particular badges of the organizations, but also for the industries in order to assess the degree of the skills of each of the applicants in a job interview, for instance. So it's quite interesting, at least for me that come from the industry. So thank you very much. I don't see any questions right now in the chat, but as I mentioned at the beginning, we can open the audio for anyone that would like to ask a question. So if you are interested on asking a question, you have in your panel the possibility of raise your hand. So you have the possibility now of doing so. So I give you like 1 minute. In the meantime, let me show you I'm going to take the control of the presentation. Just let me show my screen again, just to remind you where to go in our BDVE website to see the stuff about the skill recognition system. So go to bigdatavalue.au, and then you can click on the skills area and go to the skill recognition program, and you will find all the information that Nico was talking about before. Also, you will find this webinar recording in this area of the same website, or past webinars. If you click on there, I would say tomorrow, the day after tomorrow, you will see one of the past webinars. You will see this one, and you will be able to access to the recording of this session or to the slides that Nick was presenting. So you will be able also to see there the emails and the slides of that Nick was talking about before. So I don't know if anybody would like to ask a question. I don't see any raised hands so far. If not, I have a question to Nick, brief one. Do you have any particular interest from the industry so far? Because at least I guess that this is a very interesting, as I mentioned before, a very interesting thing for the industry to understand the skills of applicants for a job in our companies. But I don't know if you plan to do some kind of marketing approach to reach out to the industries in Europe, or do you have some plans for the future in that sense?
So the main reaching out that we've been doing has been through the BDVA Task Force and the presentations we've been doing in different forums. We've been gathering feedback, lots of, maybe people are even tired to hear about this, we're gathering lots of feedback from all the partners of the BDVA Task Force. We've also been promoting this in different forums like the SME Alliance and other places. Most importantly, what we've been trying to do more than anything else is to listen to the needs of the people that are hiring and trying to take them into consideration. At the moment, we only have 2 universities that are actually able to issue badges, and we're hoping that that will increase, and we're hoping that once we have some candidates owning badges, will be candidates which already have, or the owners of badges, will be able to provide some more promotion of this, and maybe try to get even more feedback and more comments from people.
Okay, thank you.
Whether Ernestina has anything she'd like to add, because Ernestina actually has been the person who's been in contact with the SME, for example, Task Force, SME Alliance, and other people like that.
No, in fact, this is what we have been really doing, and what we are planning now is just to start contacting all the academies that are part of the BDVA, just to see which is their interest. Because I mean, we are just very, very surprised by the low number of institutions applying for the badges. So I mean, if they don't apply, then this will be something that will disappear. So we are just now going to contact one by one all the academies and just see which can be their interest and so on. So we will be glad to hear just from the attendees today, and of course we will contact any other people. So we will see. So that's it. Thank you.
Okay, there is another question from Patricia Jimenez. She said that he cannot use the microphone, but in any case, the question is for non-formal education, in the future, a company would be able to request to issue badges for in-house training?
So the idea is that in the case of corporations, the corporation would design their own badge. So badges are not something like degrees that require an accreditation, like anyone, like, you know, even if you want to start issuing badges to the friends of your children in your neighborhood, anyone could do that. And that's actually one of the beautiful and interesting things about badges. So any corporation can design their own badge program. And even a lot of the work involved in issuing badges and things like that can be managed by one of these platforms. So in the case of our program, we've selected a platform that we're using as a basis of the badges that we're issuing. A corporation could contract that kind of a service and issue badges to their own employees. So the idea is that they would establish their own program and their own requirements, and then they could apply for the endorsement of that program. So the endorsement, like I said, that's the thing that we're not exactly sure how that exactly is going to work because of the wide variety and wide possibilities of things that are available. But the idea would be to provide some kind of like application process, which would then require that the corporation provide information in a very standardized format that would be verified in some sense. and then would allow more easily the comparison of the training that was provided by the corporation to their own employees with trainings from other corporations. But the badge itself wouldn't be something that like these that you're seeing on Tomas's screen. These are the badges that we're planning on offering for formal education. The badge would be something designed by each individual corporation, but then would have this label and possibly an endorsement that would be a more centralized thing.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick and Ernestina. I think we are reaching the time where we should close the webinar. Just let me remind all of you that this information, these slides, will be available through this website, through the webinars area of this page. You will receive an email tomorrow with the link to this website. So don't worry. You don't have to write it down right now. And of course, you are also welcome to come to future webinars. I mentioned some at the beginning. You will also find in these pages more information about that. So thank you very much, Ernestina and Nick, for this presentation, and also thank you very much to all the attendees for waiting until the very last minute. So thank you very much to all of you, and I hope to see you soon in future webinars, and of course, stay safe during these days. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.